if your ethnicity, as we only just met, but I'm sure, given that you work here and you do that, I'm sure your ethnicity is a major part of your identity. But it's not the only component. And to ignore it for the sake of creating something, you're doing your own journey of self-discovery a complete disservice. But to make it the only focus is also doing your journey, your writing, a disservice. So throw it all in the washing machine. If everything goes pink, okay. I only think that I'm considered part of that scene by virtue of my background anyway, right? I'm really, really good friends with all those guys. And they have, early on in my career, they gave me great opportunities, and I love them all. But if any of them want me to open for them or whatever,
you're there.
I'm there. Having said that, no, I think I'm only considered as part of that bracket just because I am Italian and Greek. If I am going to be considered an ethnic comedian, WOG comedian, no problem. I'm happy to be. I love my people. I'm happy to be an avatar for them. But let's do something different. Let's see if we can push the things we talk about to a new level while keeping it on theme.
Right.
Yes.
It sounds like, and correct me if I'm not understanding you, but it sounds like maybe you're striving to make the genre more three-dimensional. Would that be fair?
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it that I didn't have the balls to put it. I mean, I'm really, really interested in where so-called WOG culture sits in contemporary Australia, because depending on where you sit, we are just white people, or we are like Con the Fruiterer, you know what I mean? And I almost feel like that answer is tied in with how traditional WOG values intersect with progressive ideals in a modern Australia. I feel like both of them go hand in hand.
Flesh that out for me. What do you mean?
So, okay, I don't know the answer to these questions that I'm posing, and I really would like to know, because there have been times where I have been told I'm just another straight white comedian, and there are times where I've been told I am the WOG comedian, and I don't really feel like either of those things. And I also feel like if you are to box yourself in as any of those things, you kind of have to adhere to certain philosophies and ways of thinking that are associated with those kinds of people. Like the typical thinking around the WOG dad, you want to come out to your WOG dad as non-binary or trans or gay or whatever. There is kind of a well-trodden way of thinking that it's like that would be terrifying,
right,
as compared to if you had, white Australian parents. And I don't understand that.
So there's this assumption that maybe our values are less progressive, more backward, that sort of thing.
Yeah, less progressive and more backward, and perhaps somewhat frozen in time at a point of our grandparents or wherever, or whoever it was, is immigration. And you can't have it both ways. You can't be, we're just white people, but we're also these backwards people.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. To be honest with you, and maybe you felt the same way, growing up, I thought I wasn't white. It wasn't actually until I was 23 living in the States that someone for the first time called me a white guy.
Yeah.
Because in Australia, white tends to mean Anglo.
That's right.
It's a very narrow definition of white. So it can be kind of confusing in the context of identity, like how we see ourselves. But do you also feel maybe in the context of comedy, we don't do ourselves any favors, because that material, right, like coming out to your WOG, that's done. Like it's not Anglo-Australians who do that to us. It's us, right? No, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but
you're in trouble. But yeah, you're right, because, okay, I think by virtue of being WOG's subculture, the very first subculture in Australia to feature prominently within the media as protagonists. Wog's out of work, Acropolis now,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. There had never been non-white Australian main characters in anything ever. The only way, and it's happened historically in most English-speaking countries, the way for subgroups to pierce through is through comedy, because you reveal yourself to be disarming, you reveal yourself to be part of the gang, everyone's comfortable with you because you are funny, and that's your way through. But I think by virtue of being the sled dog on that front, our diversity is always seen through the medium of fun. When we're to be made fun of, we're Sushi Mango, we're Con the Fruiterer, we're that. But
We have to be clowns.
We have to be clowns. But when we're to be taken seriously, nah, we've already got a white guy on the project. We've got Peter Hellier. We don't need Ray. We're fine, right? Because I had the exact same experience that you were talking about. I never thought I was white, and then an American comic said it to me, and I'm like, I suppose so. And racially, we are white, you know. If you consider like on a global scale, we are.
That's a new thing though, because whiteness changes. I mean, Italians weren't considered white even in the US decades ago. The Irish weren't white. Yeah. The whitest of the whites, the Irish, weren't considered white. So as a concept, it's changed. And now I feel like we live in a particular time where we're just we've just crossed the threshold, and it's kind of done something to the way we see ourselves.
Yes.
Confused us perhaps.
Yes. But your point before is something that is really salient to me. Comedy is really important. Comedy is a lot more important than I think I give it credit for sometimes, by just being like, I make a lot of dick jokes. So in that regard,
it's got to be done.
It's got to be done. But comedy is important because it's a really interesting magnification of who we are as people.
Did you enjoy that clip? Did you not? It doesn't matter to me. Subscribe. For the love of God.